All right. Welcome back to the long and short of it. I'm Jen,
Um, I'm Jacob Bowden, professional golfer and explorer.
and we are not doing a golf podcast. So, this is not a golf podcast. This is a conversation through the medium of golf in which we dig into your story, right, Jacob?
Yes, so I've been a professional golfer for over 20 years. So we've got a stack of conversation starter cards that we can pull from here and use those as prompts to talk about something interesting and meaningful that happened for me, but also what people don't realize for us. So I think it's like an interesting perspective to get our perspective as a couple, and then we'll just kind of uh, see where it goes.
And I think this week's a little bit different because I'm in Europe this week. I'm in Switzerland where we lived for almost 8 years, and you're back at home in our pad. And so we're, on the road, sort of showing up, regardless of, what's going on in our week to week. So yeah, we decided to carry it forward. And we're having a heat wave in Europe. So it seems like the electrical, it's a ghost or it's an electrical experience, but it's
I
flickering.
was just gonna say, or maybe it's ghost.
Or maybe it's a ghost. So yeah, so tuning in from Zurich and tuning in from Detroit. And I think what's really interesting about this week is we started having people commenting, right, and asking questions. People starting to pop in and share so the reflections around, how we're evolving this. We are going to get this onto podcast platforms. Um, we'll get there eventually. But for now, we're showing up. At least,
I love this ghost.
I know. It's pretty good. But didn't we have a couple of questions that came through, a couple of comments? So instead of pulling things from the deck, are we going to respond to those?
Yeah, I think so. So,
Yeah.
um, first of all, why don't we let me share the call-in number here for those that want to call in and leave a voicemail message because we could use these also. 313-356-6830. So please feel free to call in and leave a voice message for us and maybe we'll use that. But like Jen just said, we did get some comments here. So we
First one.
both, what's that?
Let's do the first one.
Okay. The longer one or the shorter one?
Dealer's choice.
Okay, we'll do the shorter one first, and let's do both. But we'll start with the shorter one here, and it was more directed towards me, but like I'd be interested in hearing your answer too. And the comment was on YouTube. Interesting content. Really like the golf connection. Looking forward to more. Oh, and what did you do before golf? So this is kind of good, I think, um, to get to for people to get to know us a little bit. So I'll share a little bit about that, but then also like just I think people would be interested in knowing a little bit about your background as well. So before golf, my I started out my first jobs as a teenager. I refereed and umpired
You're going way
soccer.
back.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, yes.
Well, I don't know. People are curious, so I just want to answer.
Yeah, let's go way back. Okay, yes, teenager.
Yes. And then so referee umpired soccer games and baseball games, lifeguard, groundskeeper. Then I worked at Walmart pharmacy for 5 years, some student center jobs, and that got me through college. And then after college, I was
Wait. Why were you working at the pharmacy? Because you were going to what? You were going to pharmacy.
well, originally I was in a doctorate program to be right at a high school
Yeah.
to be a pharmacist, and
Yeah.
really the real reason I think in like looking back and deep down was that like it was giving me a chance to play college basketball.
Mm.
um, so that was the I think the real driver for me, even though there were others like kind of like surface things of good reasons. But anyway. After college, I was a certified mixologist. I
Oh
wasn't
God.
so I wasn't going to do pharmacy, so I was like, oh, let me do a bartending job, or because that'll be a good placeholder. Then I got a job as a web developer, and then I got a job as a
Wait, my love. How many bartending gigs did you do?
one. It was a very, very short-lived career. Uh,
And what was the event in which you could shine? Was it like a catering event? Like, why was it only one?
it was a catering event. Yeah, we did a 40-hour training where we had to like make drinks in under time, and this instructor would like call out a drink and we had to make it quick and it had to be accurate and on time. So it was about 40 hours of that and then one catering job. And then I got this job as a web developer at Missouri
Oh,
Botanical
okay.
Gardens.
So it wasn't
So
because you weren't like exceptional at your mixology career. You just got another
no,
lucrative. Okay.
no, I needed to make money and I wasn't a pharmacist at that point. So it's like it was just something easy to do and it sounded fun and the time went by quick. So
Mm.
um, web developer, and then I was a computer operations engineer for 5 years before from 22 to 27 before I started my golf career. So that's the answer. And then what were your jobs?
Well, I just actually want to pause there for a second because I think that, you being a computer engineer, like I mean, you had some like natural like math and science talents, right? So, that was, I mean, you were in the dot com. And so I think that's kind of a cool part of your background. Like you had this, you were able to do a pretty highly technical job, and that really provided you an opening for a career. Even your brother ended up working in, more or less like that space and going on to have a really successful and expansive career in that like technical computer science. I don't know if I'm calling it the right thing, but I just want to preface that as the background because when you left that career, it wasn't like you had a career that was opening up, and I think that's like, when you shifted to golf, it wasn't like you were just leaving a bartending job. You weren't like dropping your budding like mixology career, but you actually had, you were in like the beginning of this really evolving big computer space, right? I mean, you caught the energy of that pretty early on.
Yeah, it was 1998. It was in the dot-com days for the if you're old enough if you're watching and old enough to remember, there was the Y2K thing that we
Yeah.
went through from 1999 to 2000.
Yeah.
And yeah, my parents were both math and science teachers. My brother went to Washington University. He was a uh, biomedical engineer with a computer science background. So like, yeah, very, very sciencey, very technical. Um, yeah, so I was like in a very, very stable, um, good like Midwestern tech job, I guess, in a time where tech was like really booming.
Well, I mean, not even just a Midwest, I mean, good for any region, right? It was, you could have really taken you to a lot of different
Sure.
places. Do you think that there's a connection between golf and like science and like do you think that you having sort of, some people, we're all sort of born into the world with different talents and, for some math comes easier and for some, other, sort of subjects come easier. Do you think that like your sort of ability to and just like your strength in math and science had any impact in sort of your connection or interest in golf?
Uh, it helped that background helped me in my golf career.
Mm.
Um, I guess in a couple of ways. I remember from being in school to be a pharmacist, we would do like a lot of labs, like chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry, biology, like anatomy, physiology, like all these things. So there was very much it taught me a lot of critical thinking skills. So how to like dig into information and to like, and also when I'm testing things to like have a constant and so that when you're making changes, you know whether the changes that you're making are actually causing the change that you're trying to make. So it did help me. It was very applicable towards making this transformation from average golfer to pro golfer. And then also interestingly, like the anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, all those kinds of things were really, it gave me a really deep understanding of like how the body worked, which
Mm,
ended up becoming, even though I didn't become a pharmacist, that background ended up being important for me because I developed a lot of I was really innovative in the golf space, as it turned out, in developing in like literally industry leading swing speed training programs and things like that, and making transformations. So a lot of the, even though the pharmacy career and science background or pharmacy career didn't work out, in fact, you could say it was a complete failure. Like I was literally forced to leave. I was getting either gonna it was a 6 year doctorate and I was in my fourth year, and it was like I was getting some bad grades, not because I didn't wasn't smart enough. It was more just uh, my heart wasn't into it. So when you're in a medical program, it's like it doesn't really matter how smart you are if you're not there to show up and do the work and you want to do it. I think it's just it's too difficult. So I was like I had to uh, leave. I was either going to get kicked out of the school or I could leave on my own accord. So I left on my own accord, and that had to be really difficult for my parents. It was really difficult for me because it's like, what am I going to do now? I have student loans, which is why I got that bartending gig because I was like, oh, I need to like right the ship here. Could I go back to school? I could, but I don't know what I want to do. So it was some maybe things that seemed like failures and really difficult times at
mhm.
the time, but ended up later on becoming a really important part of becoming a professional golfer. So,
I remember one of the things I remember, wasn't there, you love databases. Like, I don't think that there's a database that you haven't like really loved. And so like, I think, what was it when you were assembling the list of like the longest drives or something like that? And I don't know, I just remember like Excel spreadsheets. And I think like early on in our relationship, because for, the story of you leaving that and then going on a golf career, it feels like total disconnect. But I think what's really been interesting for me being a part of, your journey and even learning about you over the years and seeing how this chapter of your life that I didn't know you in, how some of the skills and attribute and just natural ability and interest kind of has bled into your golf career. And I think like one is your very scientific mind, and like when you are thinking about, and I think that's like you're an intellectual golfer in that way, because you'll look at, if you're looking at different swings, or, who's doing the longest drive, or I always think about you pulling to data together and pulling together like spreadsheets and analyzing it. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah, you helped me um, with this rebrand to professional golfer and explorer now. And
Mm,
when we look back at my career, a lot of it's not so much about the joy isn't in the competition, which is so valued and overvalued, I would say, in the US.
mm, yeah.
It's more in the exploration and like digging into the data and going down this rabbit hole and this foxhole or
Mm,
and sifting through data and trying to figure out like, all right, well, what's the thing to glean from this? And it did start out very science based, but then over the course of the career, it gradually kind of shifted to more intuitive based, and that ended up being a greater strength than the original science. But now I kind of blend them together. I don't know, kind of like you do, like you're an anthropologist and you
mm.
blend like data and intuitive insights to like come up with strategies. So
True. That's true. I also think it's just I think that you were one of the earlier players in the golf industry that was online. Like I remember when I first met you, you had your Bowden.com website. It was like really colorful. And I actually didn't know a lot of people. I think you were one of the first people I personally met who had their own personal website. And so I think this like technical acumen that you've had coming into the sport, it positioned you because you also I remember when you started like Swingman Golf, that actually started off as a book. And then we were like, oh, let's turn that into a web platform, and it could be a membership community and et cetera. And I think, and all the YouTube content, like you were one of the like early golfers out there that was producing and putting out a lot of content, and exploring these different platforms before there was any like real like these like influencer categories. So I just think it's kind of interesting how some of that background that you had before you were in the golf space, which has now been over 20 years, has really supported and come through in different ways, but like supported also what you've been doing with your career.
Yeah, with the tech background, with the computer engineering, it was like part of a startup, a dot-com startup in a way. So when you're in a startup culture, it's very much all hands on deck, and you do everything. So like I was doing system administration and networking and web development, and just kind of getting my hands in all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And although that, and it was only a 5-year thing, and like ultimately what I wasn't supposed to be doing, it did play an important role in my journey because it allowed me to um, get in the tech space early, I guess, in golf. Like I had my personal website, like you were saying, in 2002, and then when I was trying to look for a way to fund, or we were trying to look for a way to fund my golf career,
Uh-huh.
um, it, taking starting Swingman Golf in 2007 and doing it in an online way, it was very, very strange at that point to be a golfer. And it's like, wait a minute, you don't work at a club? Like people just didn't get it. So it was
Mhm.
very so it was another thing, I guess, of like
Yeah.
something that started off as in one point in life, it was like, oh well, this what isn't my where I really want to be, and maybe it's like a failure, but then it ends up later on down the road, ends up being an asset, and position me to like and us to like really kind of um be on the forefront of things,
Mhm.
and be innovative, I guess.
Yeah. Here you go. You thought this would be a short question, but I think there's just a lot. I just did
We
this.
haven't even gotten to
So
what you
yeah,
do.
I know. No, but because there's so much there. And I think the other thing too, because I grapple with this in my own career of like, I spent, my first chapter of my professional career was working in mental health in post 9/11 New York City. And then, I mean, I'm not going back like you did to my teenage years. So, but my first professional like thing out of college was that. And then I was working in the counterterrorism and political violence field for a while, looking at like security more broadly, looking at different research, doing different research, looking at different violent phenomena and its impact on society. And then from there, I was a management consultant, consulting different businesses, using my background as a social scientist and an anthropologist, and using that to then advise on different business strategy. And then I've been working in the social impact space, running my own consultancy, and now I have a nonprofit with a few amazing other folks, different chapters, but like you, there are connective threads that feed into that. And so I think, what I like about, your before golf story is that there are certain things that you did that you were interested in, you had natural ability for, that have definitely pulled through this, what seems like a radically different chapter in many ways is, but it still gave you things that were very useful and helpful, to apply in a unique way that has differentiated you. So I love that part of your story. So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a little interesting. It'll be interesting to see, you know, uh, what challenging moments now will later on down the road end up revealing themselves as like as assets, and like a
Yeah.
kind of like a thing like, oh, thank goodness this thing that seemed hard at the time happened, because now, fill in the blank.
So,
So yeah, that happened with you too. Like I guess with your career with like being in starting in university research, and then going into consulting, and then going and then going in-house, and then starting your own adventure also. So there's like different chapters that have kind of like fed into, and each one has kind of added on, I think, cumulatively in a way that was beneficial, even though it might have been challenging at the time.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I do have moments where I'm like, did I blow up my life at this point? No. But I mean, living on the edge. What's the other question that we have?
Yes. So the other question, I'll just read the whole thing. It's a two-part thing.
Okay.
Um, I'm glad I found this channel. I first saw you on Be Better Golf. That's a golf channel. I have two questions for you. First, I'd love for you guys to talk about kids in golf. On one hand, every parent wants their kids to excel, win tournaments, and be the next Rory McIlroy or Tiger Woods. On the other hand, you want your kids to remain happy. You don't want to steal their childhood, etc. How do you balance this? And then the second question is, looking back at 20 years of professional career, what mistakes did you make and how did you deal with them? If you could turn back to your teenage years, what would you do differently? Hope you would cover these. Thanks a lot.
Oh my gosh.
Um, would you rather
Let's do the
kind
first
of
one.
tackle
Let's do the first
the
part.
kids in golf? So what do you think about that? Like what, I'll just,
Well,
um,
we don't have kids. We have cats. But I think we have a lot of views on this because, you know, so I was, in growing up, I was really had a really good ability for soccer and played at a high level in college, and I got really burnt out. I got really burnt out. I remember I loved that sport. I had so much fun. And then it almost became like a job, and there's so much in our society now. And you kind of, we have a lot of friends who are parents and also our, family members who are parents. And it's really hard to navigate, it seems like to me, the space of how do you expose your kid to different activities that may turn into opportunities for them to flex their natural ability, and to explore that and to expand that, and you want to cultivate that as a parent. And on the other hand, there's certain aspects of the way that our society has evolved and is evolving where everything just seems so intense. Like, I just look at the amount of extracurriculars that kids have to do. Like, there's no opportunity to be bored. And I think it was like serious when I was growing up. I'm a 45-year-old woman. So in the 90s, when I was like playing a lot of soccer and eventually got to a point where I was so burnt out, um, I didn't have a chance to like cultivate other aspects of myself. And so I think, I think it's hard for a parent because if you have a child that has an incredible ability in some area and they want to play more of it, and there's also this like societal push of like, okay, now you got to do this and you got to do this. And it's almost really, it seems to me to be really difficult to manage both the natural talents that a child's expressing, hi streets, the natural talents that a child's expressing, the enthusiasm that they have, but then the sort of societal pressure that comes with that. I don't know. I as an observer, and I've seen, parents grapple with that and try to walk that line. It seems tough. I don't. Those are just my initial reactions. What comes up for you?
yeah, I would kind of reiterate what you said. It's like, we're coming from from the perspective of not having kids, but we were once kids. We were both high level athletes. You were offered full ride scholarships for soccer and got a chance to play Division I soccer. So I think we could both speak to this from the standpoint of being uh, highly competitive, I guess, or being in highly competitive environments. Um, I would say, but yeah, we have friends that have kids. We have nieces and nephews. I would say uh, a couple things in hindsight. Me personally, I wish I hadn't skipped a grade,
Mm,
um, because I uh, went from the last month of kindergarten, and my parents asked me like, "Hey, do you want to skip ahead?" Because I was doing really well academically and I was a smart kid, and I was like, "Yeah." So they did. I don't know what their discussions were about it, but they went ahead and put me forward. But then knowing what I know now, that two of my gifts ended up being my physical strength and my athleticism,
mm,
that really harmed me a lot. Um, so uh, there's even a study about this with from the 80s with uh, Canadian um, those kids in Canadian ice hockey that ended up making the NHL. There was a direct correlation with what time of the year they were born and whether or not they made the NHL. That's even within the same grade.
mm.
So when I was kind of mid-year, and in the grade below, in my the grade that maybe I was of my age peers, I was probably the maybe the best athlete. But then if I skipped ahead, not only am I half a year behind, but I'm a year and a half behind. And then I'm like, I'm good. But then all of a sudden I'm not getting the scholarship offers and those kinds of things, even though like, so I always kind of thought like, oh, I'm a late developer, but I wasn't a late developer. I was just moved ahead. So that was a little bit challenging, I would say. So that's not an everyday experience to like skip a kid ahead. But I don't know if you're thinking about having kids, the time of the year that you have the kid that your kids will be born could influence their potential success in sports if they end up going down that route. But then also I would say, you know, it is this your dream that they
Mm.
become a Roy McIlroy and or
I
Tiger
was
Woods,
thinking, this is what I was
or
thinking.
is this the kid's dream?
Mhm.
So I would you would say the same kind of thing, like
Yeah, I think, gosh, I think even with you and I think so much of being in a good relationship, and that is with your partner, your kids. I think a lot of it is like, do you know on what your own motivation is? What your own underlying sort of, what are you trying to get out of this relationship? And that sounds very transactional. I don't mean it to sound like that, but I think a part of like having really good relationships is one, having a good relationship with yourself. And the other is then, thinking about how that then bleeds into your relationship with others. And if you're somebody who, really wanted, to be that star athlete, or maybe it was close to you, like maybe if we had kids, knowing what you know about, you know, timing of being born and, when kids, go into school and what grade they're in and all that, maybe that would have bled into that experience and you would have really, I don't know, maybe you would have tried to hold our child back so they could have been like athletically advantageous, I don't know, but see, that's you bleeding into potentially that experience. And so I think it's, gosh, for those that are parents out there, props to you. It is hard work, and there's nothing more beautiful in the world than seeing a parent who just is gunning for their kid. And I just, kudos to that. But I do think that part of navigating, especially if you have a kid with, athletic ability and talent and et cetera, and they, start to show, then I think there is like you have to really keep your sort of hand on the pulse of yourself. What are you feeding into? How much are you getting on this? And really check and seeing like, is that line up for a kid? Because it's, a kid is going to just sort of grab their environment. It's sort of for parents to sort of keep the guardrails and keep options open and, sort of protect them from society, sort of, trying to exhaust and, all of the things. And again, as somebody who doesn't have kids, I'm not suggesting that I know how to navigate that. But I do think just knowing what I know about good relationships, I think it does start with understanding yourself and your own motivation.
there is a little bit of that pendulum going the other way kind of thing. You mentioned like, oh, if we had kids, since I was skipped ahead, would I then advocate for going the other way and holding the kid back? But then that could work out just as bad because maybe the kid is like so gets bored and is not motivated. And
Yes.
so I don't know. Like I mean,
Or or even like since I got really exhausted from like all of the pressure in soccer and it went from being fun to being a job, maybe I'd be like, if they had like, I'd be like, no, let's not do like, you don't need to join that other club. And then so it's so hard to navigate. But I do think that there is a societal challenge right now that we have in the US and maybe elsewhere, where just kids are pressured to perform at such constant levels. So it's not just like the sport, but it's the extracurriculars. And, I think about what it took for me to get into college 25 years ago, whenever that was, and what it takes now for kids to get into college. It's wild how much it's changed and how competitive and how stacked you have to be with grades and performance and extracurriculars and et cetera. And so I do think that it takes a lot for a parent to sort of navigate and think about that. I do think that, you do also have cases that come out like the Williams sisters and or the Williams sisters who had a father that was constantly hitting them on the courts, like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And in a way, that's what led to them becoming the incredible phenomenon, like the greatest athletes of all time the goats that they became in their sports, particularly like Serena Williams. So, I think like sometimes it can work out. And then sometimes, I mean, we also see how Tiger Woods, went through a lot of emotional challenges over the years and sort of that was for the world to see. And, you kind of wonder, like, was that part of his own sort of experience growing up with very high pressure to perform? It's hard, because it also depends on what's the psychology of the kid. And, sometimes it can work out and sometimes it can't. I don't know. Are we still even answering a question? Are we on track?
yeah, it's just, parenting and kids and advice and what you might have done
I don't know. I feel
differently.
like the parents that are listening in should chime in. What's your perspective? What do you think about how we're viewing this? Are we, or what's the other point of view? I mean, I would say either call in or type in. I would love to
Yeah,
hear perspectives of
well,
this.
let me pull up the call-in number again is 313-356-6830. If you want to leave a voicemail or if you want to leave a comment about your own experience, like we could certainly, that would be cool
Yeah,
to
I mean,
see
maybe at some point
the different perspectives.
maybe even at some point we have a parent on. We even have, one of like my brother, I guess our brother, has, his daughter is an incredible athlete, and has, performed at very high levels, in across a couple of athletic domains. And we've talked to him and how he sort of navigated that, her ambition, along with, also his pride as a parent and wanting to open up as many doors as possible. It's not my brother and his wife, right? And so they're just incredibly supportive parents and have, opened up any potential possible door that they possibly could for their kids. But also they've, had to navigate that of like, how do we facilitate this forward? And, how do we keep a light touch and she's driving forward. So, maybe at some point we could, even, if this is something that the audience of people tuning in want to talk more about, you would probably be helpful to bring a parent on, I mean, we do have high performing cats, I will say, but it's not quite the same. What's
I,
what's
I
any
would
other
say,
any other
just
questions?
to
Yeah. Any other
I would just say to like put a like a pin on it, I guess. Just as long as you're doing the best that you can with the decisions that you're making, parent or not parent, the decision, and this kind of ties back into what we were talking about earlier with like jobs, is like maybe there's not going to be a right or wrong answer. And I think ultimately it will work out okay. And you'll get what you need, and the kid gets what they need to become the person that they're supposed to be. And sometimes, maybe you have regrets about like, oh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. And that's easy to say in hindsight, but in the moment, you don't know that. So as long as you're just trying to make the best, just trust yourself and trying to do the, oh, we got hearts coming across the screen. I don't even know how you did that, but
That's such a nice, it's such a balanced way of responding to that. Well done.
yeah, okay. So let's what was the other part of that? What mistakes did you make and how, oh yeah. So looking back at your career, what mistakes did you make and how did you deal with them? And if you could turn back time to your teenage years, what would you do differently?
This is
Do you want to?
you. No, this is for, well, I think this is, this is really like reflecting on you. How would you answer that?
Yeah, but like, we're together on this, so like, we're okay. I'll throw something out
It's
and we'll
odd.
see where it goes. Yes.
I have no regrets, so let me just put it out there. I've had all the fun and I have no regrets. So
Well, there's just the. I'll mention one mistake that we had to navigate through a lot. That I would have done differently in hindsight, but no regrets. So uh, twice in my career, um, I got taken advantage of by business partners
mm,
that I trusted, like as far as like handshake kind of trusted. And one of them I had a contract and the that person but 5 years elapsed and fortunately I saved it was in a storage box. I saved the contract that was signed and he said like oh well, I want this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, that wasn't part of our deal. And then so I pulled up the digital copy and I sent it to him and like, oh yeah, yeah, that's right. Oh, but it's not signed. And I'm like, what? Really? You're doing that? So then I searched frantically through our storage, um, old boxes and like just I don't know how long I searched, but thank goodness that like I found the signed copy of it. It was tucked away for 5 years, and we had moved a lot, so like
mm,
so that was really good. But then another time I got taken advantage of by another business partner, um, where fortunately all the records were in email, and I don't know if I want to say. I'll just leave names out of it, but
maybe not
so
important.
I think that caused me a lot of stress, and because that was causing me a lot of stress, that was causing us a lot of stress. So we had to like talk through that, and then in one instance, we had to hire legal help to try and figure out how to navigate this. And then that second one, the lawyer was like, or attorney was like, you all are in the right. You have the records here. This was the other one. But if you take this to court, it's going to cost so much to defend it and to win the case that the money that you were owed anyway, it's going to be a wash. So I just was like, all right, well, I don't want to be in court for a year. So let me just drop that and let go. So I think the thing that we came away with, I'll be curious to hear what you guys say about this. But like the thing that came away from that for me in hindsight is if it's at all important or like really important to you, then get a signed contract with it and get spend a little bit of money to get legal advice on the front end of that to protect everyone on the end of it. If it's not a big deal and you don't mind losing whatever it is you're agreeing about, then not a big deal. But if it's at all meaningful, and I was always like a handshake kind of deal, and like if I can't trust this person over a handshake, then what am I doing with working? I don't want to work with people that I can't have a handshake deal with, but
Mm,
they seem nice on the front end. But then on the back end, when there were some difficulties, then all of a sudden it revealed some character things about their character that just I did not expect at all, and that was really hard. And I felt really hurt by that. So that's I don't know what you were there for all this. What did you think about that?
Is this about like if there's any regrets? Yeah.
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 So regret. It was sorry. I'm just trying to find it. Oh yeah. Um, looking back, what mistakes did you make? How did you deal
Yeah.
with them?
Yeah. I think,
What would you do differently?
yeah, I think what was so critical about those things, you don't, you know, if we look at this like experience on planet Earth as like a school, right? You don't learn anything unless you get tested, right? And so as hard as those things, those moments were, and it's also hard because, you know, at least for one, you lost a friend, I felt like a friend. Yeah.
It was a friend and father figure
Yeah. Yeah.
and mentor, like all wrapped into one: father figure, mentor,
Yeah.
friend. That was really hard.
And I think when we go through these experiences in life, like everybody's on their own journey and everybody's learning their own lessons. And so it's hard, we try to keep, I think, a compassionate heart. And I think on the one hand, those were mistakes. And now, having learned from them, now we know what to do, right? And I think any business person you talk to, or anybody who takes risks and takes, or adventures on a new experience that they don't know about fully, you're going to make mistakes. And so I think, and that's a part of the learning journey. And so I think, like, in a way, I'm like, well, they were probably unavoidable, because if we didn't make those mistakes, we probably made other mistakes. And so, that's been part of the learning journey. And also I think it's really tightened up for you. It's made, when these things happen, it's like, who are you in those moments? What type of person are you in those moments? What are your values? Do you actually live and practice your values? What's actually maybe really even more important for you going forward in partnerships and things like that? So I feel like in both of those experiences, you got and we got a lot of essential learning that's helped you even sharpen who you want to work with. How do you remain in integrity? What are the things that you need to do to ensure that the partnership remains in integrity? And so I don't want to say protect. It is about protection, but it's
Mm.
actually just remaining that it remains in integrity, and that if there's any changes in that partnership, or you need to go in a different direction, that it's done in a mature and respectful way, And so I think, like, yeah, they were mistakes, but they were almost like, can you say essential mistakes? Like, they were critical, that I think, you know, the next partnership opportunity that you have, like, whatever, however that, that really has exchange of resources, ideas, intellectual property, money, etc. That you're going to be better equipped, and will be better equipped. And in that way, the partnership will be better supported. So, I think that that's kind of been sort of also the frame that, because there's even some things that I feel like mistakes I've made. But now that I reflect back and look at them, I'm like, well, I actually really also learned some things about that. So, I think that is really been really helpful. Are there any other mistakes that you feel that come up, or regrets that you feel pop up for you in your career so far?
Um, well, well,
Mhm.
part of the question was going back to teenage years. So we should probably kind of get to our long and short of it here.
Oh yeah,
Um,
we're probably very long on this one, but we have,
but like, I think, again, this is out of hindsight, and I was just doing the best that I could at the time that I was doing it. But part of the question was going back to teenage years. And um, looking back, the advice I would give myself is to have the courage to be myself
oof,
and honor me, and don't try and do things for other people or to impress other people or to get other people's love or attention or whatever.
yeah.
Um, I was super happy kid up until maybe sixth grade or so, and then right when puberty starts happening and popularity, like kids in junior high can be pretty brutal. And then I started getting away from who I was, and I
Mhm.
started looking outside of myself for validation, and like, oh, what do I need to do to be liked or be popular or whatever. And it drove me I got further and further away from who I was and myself until college, and that was when I uh, had to leave pharmacy school. But then the reverse of that, it set me on a journey of like um, uh, personal growth, um, uh, trying to understand myself, what it is that trying to find my way back to myself.
Mm.
And that's what got me into golf. So, again, it was like I did the best I could at the time, and I don't know, the mistake I made was not honoring what was important to myself and just who I was and what I liked doing. But I don't regret that because
Mm.
it um I probably wouldn't be. I don't know if I would have met you. I would probably. I don't know if I would have had my golf career. I don't know. All this
Mm.
mistakes led to the where we're at now. So
Yeah. I think for me, I think the only thing is I think there's so much pressure on kids to go right into college and actually feeling like college is the only option. We lived in Switzerland for 8 years. I almost 8 years. I'm in Switzerland now. I come back here pretty much every year. I still do a lot of exchange and work and, level of relationships. And one of the things that they have in this country is like this apprenticeship program where if you don't want to go the university college track, then you can explore a trade, a highly technical, highly respected, highly paid track. And it just provides people with more expansive opportunities to be whoever they want to be or however they want to thrive. And I feel like in the US, it's become just so much about graduate high school, go off to college. And I would have really benefited from somebody saying, hey, Jen, wait, take a year off, go abroad and volunteer somewhere, be in another context. Because really, what I needed was I just needed to get out and I needed to be in the world and I needed to just breathe and not have any pressure for a while. So when I went to college, my first few years, I imploded. I was a disaster. I almost flunked out. And so I think for me, I think I wish I would have had, so I knew enough at that time for me to like get myself out of the state and into another college where I could sort of figure out who I was after, being in this sort of what felt like a very high pressured situation. But I wish I just would have had the either something, someone, or in myself to say, you know what, there's even another option. You can just take a year off, defer that going to that school. So, I mean, obviously, same with you. I don't regret, but I think if I was to go back in time and make one shift, that might be it. I might be curious. I actually think that if that would have happened, I probably would be sitting here still because eventually I did do that and it did give me the sort of focus and everything. It just felt like it was a couple years behind. So, long and short of it, whoa, what is the long and short of this one? We just did the long
well,
part
I would,
over time. So
yeah.
short.
But this is fun. Like we're deeper conversations, and our conversations starter wasn't the cards this time. It was just viewer comments and questions. So this is really cool. I think the long and short of it, like what's kind of popping out for me, like we talked about jobs that we used to have and old moments in our life, and then there were things about advice for kids and regrets and mistakes and lessons learned. And so I think like the long and short of it for me from this episode is that to just honor the voice that is within.
Mm. Ugh.
That's your barometer. That's your guidepost for where to go, and just make the best decisions that you can in the moment that you're in that you can. And none of those decisions will be right or wrong. It may end up leading you in, you might have to navigate some difficult moments and it might cause some difficult moments, but later on down the road, in hindsight, you'll find out that, like, oh, thank goodness that happened, and look at the learning that I got because having had gone through that. So I think, yeah, the long and short of it is just trust yourself, make the best, do the best that you can in the moment. And it's not going to be right or wrong. It's going to take you where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. I'd say, yeah, embrace, embrace the stumbling, embrace it. And I like that, like, as long as it's true, and it's so hard to listen to yourself sometimes. I mean, look, I have a maniac in my head, just like constantly, questioning. But I do think that there is something about embracing, that through the stumbles there'll be a really like important insights, and eventually, you're on your way. So thanks so much for tuning in. Actually, send more questions, call in. I mean, that was really fun. I love the thoughtfulness, with the questions that were shared, and just really appreciate it. So, and
Let me leave the call number here
yeah.
again, 313-356-6830.
And the ghost didn't come back. I mean, I think once we got going, the ghost was like, "Oh, I want to like listen to this." So somehow the electricity got, stable. So,
I
um,
like it.
yeah, sounds good. All right. There we
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Please like, comment, share, call in.
go.
If you want to sponsor the podcast, get in touch with us. If you want to sponsor me as a pro golfer, get in touch.
Yeah.
Um, thanks for being here.
All right. Thanks, folks. Bye. Bye, my love.